Mike Evans joins us. And Mr. Evans, good morning, man. Thanks for coming on KHOW.
Hey, good morning. Good morning.
I feel like I know you. Rick and Mike are probably my best friends in the business, and you've been on Lewis and Floor Wax forever. And oftentimes when I get out of here early, I listen to you in their final hour. So, but for the folks in the audience, do your background and in this business, and just take your time if you would.
Well, there's really not a lot to talk. I've been in L.A. a long time. I wrote for the New York Post many years ago. I did mornings at a station in Los Angeles. I talked a lot about that. I was shocked when I read a story last week that there was a lot of the story, but the bottom line of the story is that the Kapiolani Women's and Children's Hospital and the Queens Medical Center said that they did not have a birth certificate on record.
Now, I listened to the KQRS morning show, and I listened to you and those hosts, and you shared a controversy, this controversy rather, in a conversation that you had with the governor. Is that an accurate statement?
No, it isn't. If you listen to it, I just listened to it again.
Uh-huh.
I said I talked to Neil's office. I didn't say that I talked to Neil. And I said, but the one thing that did come out is that there was no birth certificate at Kapiolani Women's and Children's Hospital or at the Queens Medical Center. And I said that's where it would come from, and I was actually calling to see what Neil had to say about that, but I was never able to get hold of the governor.
Michael, who was your source? Who told you that?
I read it last week, and it was on the Drudge Report.
I mean, but no one, did anyone in the, who was it in the governor's office that said there is no birth certificate?
I read it, and I believe it was the New York Daily News that said that their reports there was no birth certificate at the Queens Medical Center or the Kapiolani Women's and Children's Hospital. I was calling the governor. I was calling Neil to see what he thought about that. I never got through to him. I talked to his office to ask him about that. And if you listen carefully, it's just said there's no record there still isn't. There's some kind of birth announcement that has since been said, which is a little shaky if you ask me.
You're talking about the newspapers?
The newspapers have been out. The newspapers, the Honolulu Advertisers, there was a story.
And the Examiner. They both carried little. Are you talking about initially, or are we talking about recently? Because I'm
talking. I believe that there was a birth announcement in the Honolulu Advertiser back in the day.
Yes, there was.
Right. My whole question when I called the governor last week is after I read a story, and it was on the Drudge Report. It was a long story. The first story is that the governor could not find a birth certificate. And as the story went on, towards the very end of the story, it said the only two hospitals that were having births in that time, the Honolulu, the Queens Medical Center and the Kapiolani Children's Hospital, had no record of a birth certificate. That's the story.
No, and I understand that. So here's a quote that I have from you. There is no Barack Obama birth certificate in Hawaii. Absolutely no proof at all Obama was born in Hawaii.
Well, from the Kapiolani Women's, from the two hospitals that gave birth to children, there is no record of that. There is no birth certificate.
Now, you also go on, if all this is correct, that you said that Abercrombie, the governor and your friend, now, quote, has egg on his face.
Well, you know, you're putting, I don't want to,
this is your quoted as saying that, so I'm asking if you said it.
He said he was going to torpedo.
Right.
These birth questions.
Absolutely.
And I thought, and you know, as a governor, I thought if there was anybody that could do it, he did. Certainly, not being able to do so, it doesn't make the governor look good. I mean, does it?
No, he's gone into the weeds right now. Abercrombie told L.A. Times, New York Times, and I have the Tribune, and he claimed that he actually saw the.
But he can't make it public because of privacy issues.
Well, it's just nonsense.
You know, and my other question is, how do you get a passport if you don't have a birth certificate?
Well, of course. I mean, but again, all these things start to come up. What I'm asking you is, you grew up in Hawaii. You know this governor who made a splash in December the 6th. When he takes office, he's going to torpedo the birthers. And then he gets on the job, and his spokeswoman, Donella Dela Cruz, from my notes,
right,
said, now the number one priority is the economy. And then now the governor has come out and said, he said, I'll tweet it to you, Abercrombie did not report the newspaper or he or the Hawaii Department of Health found Obama's long-form hospital-generated birth certificate. The governor only suggested his investigation to date had identified an unspecified listing or notation of birth that someone had made in the state archives. Is that a birth certificate?
I don't know.
I don't either. So, Abercrombie, now if you attempt...
I can tell you this. You know, I feel like I sort of got caught in the crosshairs.
No, I'm not.
The last thing I was thinking about last week when I was doing my Hollywood reports was Neil, and then I see this big story that Neil says that he can't provide a birth certificate.
That's why we want you on.
That.
That's why I want you on the show.
I was shocked by that.
So the governor has said he cannot provide a birth certificate.
I haven't talked to him. The Kapi'olani Women's and Children's Hospital and the Queens
let me do this.
They say they cannot supply one. So from what I read, the governor said they cannot supply one. And then 2 days later, the whole story changed. I'm sure you're on top of this.
Okay. Right.
2 days later, the story changed that he said, well,
that's right.
There is one.
But
I mean, the story changed in 2 days.
Here's what you said. This is you on the Minneapolis station.
Yesterday, talking to Neil's office, Neil says that he searched everywhere using his power as governor at the Kapi'olani Women's and Children's Hospital and Queens Hospital, the only places kids were born in Hawaii back when Barack was born. There is no Barack Obama birth certificate in Hawaii.
And you stand by that through the Abercrombie people? I
don't.
You don't stand by that?
Well, no. Again, I talked to his office. I didn't talk to the governor. I called because of the story that I read that there's no birth certificate at Queens or at Kapi'olani.
But you said Neil says, and so...
I didn't say Neil said.
I don't want to play that again.
Play it again.
All right, here, if you would. Sheik?
Yesterday, talking to Neil's office, Neil says that he searched everywhere using his power as governor.
Now, this is, you're saying Neil says, but...
No,
then I misunderstand you.
I did say, I didn't talk to Neil. I didn't hear Neil say it, but
Okay.
through the reason that I called is because of the newspaper article saying that Kapi'olani didn't have it. So I was calling to.
Have you spoken to? I think you said this earlier, but have you spoken with Neil Abercrombie since he has taken office?
No, I haven't. Last time I talked to Neil, I did a C-SPAN interview that he asked me to do a half-hour television interview show at C-SPAN the day after Barack Obama was inaugurated, and it was then that he really got into how he was going to prove that he was born in Hawaii.
Have you attempted to call him?
I have not.
When
Except that one time I called last week to find out about that story that I read about Kapi'olani.
Should you, in a follow-up, not call him?
Oh, I am going to call him.
Okay.
I am going to call him, and in a way it makes it sound I'm going to apologize to him, and I also wish that I would have been able to reach him last week when I read the story. Again, rather than the story, did you see the story about the Kapi'olani women?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, no, absolutely. I mean, but you're the guy who. And by the way, that your interview has now been taken down off of the website, the KQRS morning shows, and that's down. I don't know who did that. We captured it because we got it the other day when it came up. So there seems to be a disconnect here, and I would suspect, and you've done great work, that you got to call this guy. And you got to speak to him and say, okay, on the record, did you find a birth certificate?
Well, I'm definitely going to call him today because I'm going to. I mean, Neil is a friend of mine, and I apologize. I apologize. I'm going to apologize to Neil because.
What would you apologize for?
I was just following the story, and it makes me look like I'm accusing.
Yeah,
I think Neil is. Well, I know Neil's dancing because I think he really thought he could provide.
No,
a
I
birth
think
certificate,
yeah.
Apparently he can't.
No, he can't.
That's why. I mean, that's why.
Okay.
And I thought he could. I thought as a governor, if there was one around, he could get it.
Believe me, and he's getting no help from Washington D.C. and he does look like a damn fool. But
you know what? You know what? He's not a damn. I mean,
no.
I don't know how. I mean, Neil is really a good guy. I mean,
that's not in question whether he's a good guy or a bad guy.
I'm almost. You know.
Right.
I really don't know what to say. When I read the story, I'm sure I can find it and we'll pull it up. The direct quotes, the Capilani and the Queen say they do not have a birth certificate.
And that's true.
Then I mean, my question is, I mean, that was a big enough story, and because I know Neil, I wanted to follow it up.
We're past our break, and I know that you got a bunch of work to do this morning. But when you speak with Neil, ask him, because he made a claim that he remembered Barack Obama playing and his mother and father watching him play T-ball. Now, you play T-ball, you're 5 or 6 years of age. Barack Obama's, if you believe the nativity story, Barack Sr. left when Barack was 2, which is, you know, Barack's already left the island with his mother when he's 2 weeks of age. But he says, I remember him playing T-ball. Then he remembers seeing the Obama's father, mother, and baby at social events, in quotes. He initially said he was there when the baby was born. Now, he's lying. And I got to tell you that straight up. You say he's a good guy, I take your word for it. But he could have never seen Barack Obama play T-ball. Because, first of all, when Barack's 5 and 6, he's in Indonesia. His father's gone to Harvard. And do what you may with that.
I know that the couple of times while we were doing the TV interview on C-SPAN, a couple of times, at least once, I think twice, we had to stop taping because Neil kept referring to Barack as Barry.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I've known him since he was a little kid. I saw him from the time he was so little. I keep wanting to call him Barry, and I can't do it anymore.
He couldn't have done that. The baby and the mother left for Seattle when baby was somewhere around 2 weeks to 17 days of age. She's gone, and they can make all those proofs from enrollment in school and the rest of it. She doesn't come back to the Rock with the baby until seniors left, and then she meets Lolo and goes off to Indonesia. So for him to have claimed, this man who says a good man, he claims that I remember him playing T-ball. That's a quote. He couldn't have. And watching Barack Sr. and Stanley Ann watching a 5 or 6 year old boy play T-ball. That's a virtual impossibility, whether you believe in the nativity story or the truth. And then saying that he saw them at social engagements together. They never lived together. They were never married.
Well, that I don't know, but
I do.
I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt that Neil went into great detail about watching Barry, as he called him, and told Warren.
Well, those are lies. But why do you figure he said those things? Because they are provable to be lies. Why do you think he said those things? What's his interest in other than torpedoing the birthers, which now he can't do?
I don't
So if you get a chance to ask him about that T-ball game.
I'll do that.
All right, and ask him about the social events that he attended, remembering seeing the baby and the parents at social events, plural. Of course, Barack left for Harvard 4 years before Barack Obama was T-ball eligible.
I do know. I mean, I cannot believe that Neil didn't know him as a kid.
Well, he initially said, by the way, as you know, he said he was there when the baby was born.
Yeah.
He said that. He said, I'll read to you from the Los Angeles Times. Maybe I'm the only one in the country that can look you right in the eye right now and tell you I was here when the baby was born. Los Angeles Times right after the 6th of December. Ask him about that. If you're a good friend, and ask him. I remember him playing T-ball. He couldn't have. It's impossible.